Welcome to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. I'm Ted Bonnet, and he's not here. Phil Proctor, my partner in crime, is gallivanting again back east, having a good time. He'll be back next week. We'll both be back next week. I've been away as well for 2 weeks, learning on a vision quest of technology, which we'll talk about next week. But just to give you a hint, AI is taking over the world. So we're going to have a very interesting show today. It's about a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, named Shelley Thomson. She was a teacher to me, a good friend, a brilliant person. And she was kidnapped and held in captivity. And as crazy as that sounds, I'll explain. This is the Sexy Boomer Show, and we're going to talk about something today that is certainly relevant to anyone over age 50 and anyone who loves somebody over age 50. This is about guardianship abuse. You may have heard about it. You may not have heard about it. It's kind of shocking how little known it is, considering how widespread it is in this country. This is where elderly people are declared incompetent, and they're committed against their will into typically for-profit care facilities. And they're appointed a guardian by the court after they're declared incompetent. And the guardian could be a complete stranger, and usually is. Very often it's a family member, but I'm going to be talking about this smaller percentage, extremely still widespread number of people who are sort of professional guardians who are charged by the court to seize a person's property, their homes, their money, and take control away from the owner, put them into an institution, and supposedly take care of them because they are incompetent. This is what happened to my friend Shelley, which as the hour goes on, you'll realize just how wildly ironic and inappropriate it was for her, of all people. This is the woman who taught me about remote viewing. Yes, I met her on the astral plane. I know that sounds crazy for some of you. And in fact, I had no predisposed interest in astral projection or remote viewing or any of that. I had heard about it. But as you know, we've talked over the shows that part of my journalism, I've studied paranormal phenomena, typically UFO phenomena over the years. And I've met a lot of interesting people. And I met Shelley through a contact, a police officer who was investigating cattle mutilations in Alabama. He was from Berkeley, California originally. His name is Ted Oliphant. He's no longer with us. He was one of these gifted people who could connect you with people when you were researching the subject matter. He returned to Berkeley, California, maybe 20 years ago now, maybe even more. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, I met somebody who is supposedly one of the best remote viewers in the country. Do you know what that is?" And I said, I've heard of it. He said, "Well, I'm going to go out to lunch with her, and I said, "Do you want me to sit on a street corner or something at an appointed time and see if she can remotely view me? Is that what you're thinking?" He goes, "Yeah, something like that." And I said, "Sure, why not?" I won't get into it today because we don't have time, because we're going to be talking about what happened to her in terms of guardianship abuse. But Shelley remote viewed me without even knowing who I was or where I was from Berkeley, California, when I was in Santa Monica. And she did it twice. And later, after the fact, my friend who had lunch with her explained exactly how she described it. And she described not only what I was doing, but what was on my mind and who I was thinking about. The second time she did it, she sketched what she saw through my eyes. I was in Hollywood at a studio, actually with Phil Proctor. And Phil witnessed this with me when she faxed a sketch of what she saw through my eyes, and she noticed more than I did where I was at the time. So this was Shelley Thomson, a truly remarkable person. I, of course, called her after the second time she did it and said, "I don't know you, but you seem to know me." And she said, "Yes, you're very good at it." And I said, "Good at what?" She goes, "You're very good at projecting, remote viewing." Turns out this is a fairly common ability among people. But the brain is very efficient in energy consumption, so when technology or something allows the brain to shut off, it won't work. So essentially, remote viewing, what it is that you can leave your physical body and go somewhere and observe. It's of very great interest to the intelligence community, the Pentagon, Russia. They've all spent a lot of time and money developing assets that can do this kind of thing and spy on adversaries. It's a very real thing. It's something that I've noticed in indigenous cultures, in my Native American friends here who have been able to do it. It's very common to them because they don't have the money to have the technology like smartphones to distract them and shut them down. So it's this really wonderful natural ability, sort of a third eye, a muscle that we don't exercise anymore. And Shelley taught me how to do that. So I had been out of touch with her for a few years, but we would talk every once in a while. And one Christmas, I spoke to her. I called her to see how she was doing. And she said that she had been kidnapped, and she was being held against her will in a facility. I mean, I honestly thought she had lost it. It was unbelievable to me to think that that is possible. And the fact of the matter was, it actually did happen. She had been in the hospital. She lived alone. She had no immediate family. She had a home. She had property in Texas. She had moved back to Texas where she was from. She was hospitalized for what ended up being a potassium deficiency. And if you know anything about that, it's sometimes hard to find, and it can totally shut you down and make you incapacitated. When she was in the hospital the second time, when they finally figured it out, she had said that somebody had visited her from the state to talk to her about how she was doing and how's your living situation? Everything good? Yeah. Shelley said she didn't know why she was asking, but hey, she told her. Well, not long after that, 2 vans showed up to her home, and a number of people got out, and they were state employees, and they told her that they were taking her to a facility because she was incapable of caring for herself. She was basically imprisoned. She went before a judge, she was declared incompetent, and then she became a non-entity, a non-person. It really did happen. And it turns out that it's happening a lot around the country. Texas is one of the states that has a fairly good guardianship business going. And it's full of corruption, as you would imagine, because when strangers get a hold of your money and control you, that's just inviting all sorts of trouble. I had the good fortune of talking to Shelley when she was in captivity. We did it over the phone. And I'm going to play through the hour what she said and described her situation. And we also have a special guest today, Phil Ross, her lawyer, who came to her defense to try to help her. And he's going to join us in a moment and explain from his perspective what is going on. So just to give you a little background, the Government Accountability Office has found that state guardianship systems across the country are rife with exploitation. This is how it works. State courts appoint guardians to protect the vulnerable. But the GAO has identified hundreds of cases of negligence, as well as physical and financial abuse. Though state laws differ, a judge who rules that a person is cognitively impaired can appoint a guardian, sometimes a company, to oversee a person's well-being. The guardian can decide to sell the ward, now they're a ward, the ward's house, or move him or her into a nursing home. The guardian can also choose which of the ward's friends and relatives can visit. In Shelley's case, no one was allowed to visit her, maybe 1 or 2 people. The National Center for State Courts, a nonprofit think tank, estimates that guardians across the country supervise 1.3 million adults in an aggregate of $50 billion of their assets. One of the center's principal court research consultants said that, quote, the aging of the baby boomers and the onset of dementia, with all that happening, we can expect those numbers to go up. This is old data. This is almost 10-year-old data, so we know it's only grown. But in 2016, the Government Accountability Office reported that in 8 cases it examined in 6 states, guardians were found to have stolen more than $600,000 from their elderly wards. And in 2010, GAO report found that from 1990 to 2010, guardians in 20 cases stole $5.4 million. More than 10% of guardians are professionals who typically charge hourly fees of $70 to $150 an hour, and they are paid from the ward's assets. 75% are family members or friends, and unfortunately, not all family and friends have the best interests at heart of their relatives if their relatives happen to be sitting on a lot of cash. I'm going to turn to Shelley now, who at the time was sitting in captivity at a for-profit care center called the Colonial Manor in New Braunfels, Texas. And I asked her what was going on.
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't offer a legal opinion, but from what I know, from what I can tell about the situation, they don't have the right to keep me in here. I'm being held prisoner, and I'm not sick. I haven't committed any crimes. I don't carry any contagious illnesses. They have no right to keep me in here. And the guardian I was given to, like you'd give a piece of property to someone, the guardian I was given to, I believe, works for Adult Protective Services, a state agency. What they actually do is prey on elderly people. This is how I came to be here. I was an older person in good health, perfectly competent mentally and physically. I owned a nice house, a nice piece of property, and I lived alone. I had no idea that this made me a target for what is called guardianship abuse, which is a racket in some states, unfortunately including Texas. What they do is spot an older person who lives alone and has a nice piece of property. They falsely accuse that person of being incompetent and unable to care for himself or herself. And they have that person stuck in a facility like this one, which is a locked facility. There's a window here, but I look at it through bars. It's a nice looking lattice that's made to look decorative, but these are steel bars. Even if I had a sledgehammer, I couldn't get through this window. The doors are locked and alarmed. This is a fortress place. It is a prison, even though they don't call it that. The older person who was picked for this is accused of being incompetent, run through a sham hearing before a cooperative judge, then stuck in a place like this. And one of the conspirators is assigned as the guardian. The guardian owns that person, body and soul, and owns that person's property and can dispose of it however he or she likes. My guardian took all my money. She sold my house. She seized the contents of the house. She took my wardrobe personally. I happen to know that. We're apparently the same size, and it's a nice business wardrobe. She took everything, even my cat. And my car, of course, that's gone too. I don't have anything. I have nothing. I have been made destitute by people who work for the state of Texas. And this is a crime, and it's something my lawyer is working hard to correct on my behalf.
We have that lawyer today, but first I want to say they took her cat, they put her cat down. And Shelley died in captivity in January of this year after being held for years. We're going to talk about that. But first I want to introduce her lawyer. San Antonio, Texas probate attorney Phil Ross has a contentious reputation for practicing a no-holds-barred brand of law. Mr. Ross has tried to recuse judges and battled court-appointed guardians. He has sued opposing lawyers, a mediator, and even the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. He readily acknowledges that routinely butting heads with the powers of the court system can be hazardous. He's been sued by the State Bar of Texas over a grievance filed against him alleging, among other things, dishonesty. Phil Ross grew up in a blue-collar household in California, not far from where Shelley was when I met her. He intended to be a priest. Instead, he dropped out of the seminary and got a degree in social science at the University of California, Berkeley. He arrived in San Antonio in 1977 and in 1984 earned a law degree from St. Mary's University. And while he was in law school, he paid the bills by working as a plumber. He's a licensed plumber. He later got into home remodeling and sold real estate and has a wild project going on near San Antonio as we speak that, of course, has attracted much controversy. Welcome to the show, Phil. How are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying your program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I've been wanting to speak to you for a long time about Shelley because this has been going on for so long. How did you come to know Shelley Thomson?
As I recall, got a telephone call from Shelley when she was at Colonial Manor nursing home, asking me if I would help her to restore her capacity and to get her life back, basically get out of an unnecessary predatory guardianship. I did everything I could, but from the very beginning, it was clear that the judge was not going to allow me to represent Shelley on the pretext that he said that Shelley was incapacitated and she did not have the capacity to hire me as a retained lawyer, even though I was willing to take my chances and work for her, whether I got paid or not, in order to provide her legal services that she was denied in the process of appointing a guardianship for her. At the very first hearing, the judge ruled that I was not to have any contact with Shelley. And this was based on specious argument by the attorney for Texas Health and Human Service Commission by the name of Ann Angerer. Well, I sued Angerer and I sued the judge, and I appealed the order appointing a guardian for Shelley. And there was no recourse in the Texas judicial system. I appealed to the Court of Appeals, which denied the appeal. They affirmed the judge's orders. I filed a petition for review with the Texas Supreme Court, which was denied. And the Texas judicial system failed Shelley.
No, sure.
And in the process of advocating for Shelley and other people that had been abused by the legal system, I got some grievances in about a 2 or 3 year period on various probate cases. And the grievances were filed by either legal opponents or their attorneys. And the Texas Bar Association pursued the grievances and sued me in 3 separate district court cases. And it was an eye-opener for me, having been a practicing lawyer for over 30 years, with little regard for due process and equal protection that lawyers have when they're being sued by the Texas Bar Association. In each case, the judge granted a partial summary judgment on the liability issues, thereby depriving me of a jury determination whether I was liable for any discipline at all. And finally, in the first case, filed by Tanya Barina, who was the court-appointed guardian for Charlie Thrash, who was the subject of a Netflix documentary on guardianship abuse. Barina filed a grievance. The Bar Association set the hearing for, or the court set the hearing for punishment or discipline, and I decided it was time for me to retire. It was an easy decision, but because I was already 73 years old, it was legally time for me to retire. But it took pressure from the Bar Association to force me to that decision, which I have no regrets. I determined that I no longer wanted to be a part of an organization that did not have any regard for the due process rights of its members.
It sounds incredible, literally, that this could happen. And of course, you ask the question, well, how does this, it doesn't add up. Well, it does add up if you follow the money. And that's what this is all about. I asked Shelley to tell me a little bit about this facility called Colonial Manor Care Center in New Braunfels, Texas, where she was taken to.
The company that owns this facility owns more than 20 of them. It's a big company. The cash flow is absolutely awesome from here. And I'll tell you why that's so. The people in here, the people incarcerated in these facilities, they are big ticket items when it comes to Social Security and Medicare and other types of retirement. The facility seizes all of those funds and supposedly utilizes them for the benefit of the inmates. They don't. It's a ripoff. This is a gigantic Medicare and Medicaid ripoff and Social Security ripoff, and undoubtedly a ripoff of other pension funds as well. We're looking at a huge crime in progress, and that's how they're able to deprive people of their civil liberties and actually do harm to them under the guise of helping them. And that's how they're able to lock people up, and complaints people make don't go anywhere.
The place she was at, Colonial Manor Care Center, I did a little digging into to see what this place was about. I found on the Medicare.gov site that it was listed as a nursing home with an overall rating of 1 star out of 5 stars. It was much below average, and it was based on health inspections, staffing, and quality measures. Health inspections, 1 out of 5 stars, much below average. Staffing, 2 out of 5 stars, below average. Quality measures, 4 out of 5, above average. The legal business name that owns it is SLP New Braunfels LLC. It's a for-profit corporation. Then I also looked into the Texas state government, and they did a investigation of the place, inspection, of course. And the most recent comprehensive inspection of Colonial Manor Care Center occurred on June 28th, 2024, and 27 violations of state standards were cited. They included that the facility did not develop a comprehensive care plan. It did not store, cook, give out food in a safe and clean way. There is no full-time dietitian. Failed to establish and maintain an infection control program. And mind you, Shelley was in there during COVID. The facility failed to keep all important equipment working safely. The place was not equipped, designed, built, or kept to protect the health and safety of residents, workers, and the public. It failed to maintain the fire alarm system. The facility failed to make sure the fire alarm and fire sprinkler systems are installed and working correctly. And they failed to make sure that there was a program to prevent pests and rodents from entering the building. That's just some of the highlights of the 27 violations last year of this for-profit organization. So the question is, of course, where does the money go? And it's even darker than that, Phil. And we're going to get back to you in a second. But I wanted to ask Shelley something about that. She mentioned in that last comment that she was witnessing a crime in progress. And I wanted to ask her what she meant. And she shared a personal experience.
When I was brought here, I was wearing some of my clothes, but they were taken away and I was given the clothes this facility hands out, which was basically just rags. Usually not tatters, but they're rags. I mean, they've been worn a million times and they were cheap to start with. Pants and a shirt and sneakers, tennis shoes, and underpants, and that's that. If a woman needs a bra, tough luck. They don't give those. Anyway, all of a sudden, some of my clothes appeared in my closet. They were brought over by 2 young women who said they worked for my guardian. And without asking anything, without even warning me at all, they came with this big armful of clothes and hung them in my closet. And then they just left. Since I am simply regarded as furniture, no one explains anything to me. They just do what they feel like. Anyhow, there were the clothes there. And then someone else came by who also works for the organization that runs this facility, and he offered to walk with me to H-E-B 1 block away so I could do a little shopping. And I was delighted because I wanted to buy some things that you cannot get here. Fresh fruit, decent coffee, some cosmetics, decent food that you cannot get in this place. And H-E-B has everything I wanted, and I had a little bit of cash, so I said, yeah, let's go. But when I got back, my clothes had been removed from my closet, and I never saw them again. After having made very thorough inquiries here, and of course the management of this facility knew nothing, the staff saw nothing, nobody knew nothing at all, and I tried to make a stolen item report, and the police wouldn't take it. Oddly enough, the police, while courteous, don't take any reports from this facility, because they know we're locked up in here because we're crazy and, they don't want to make work for themselves. They're polite, I'll say that for them, but no police complaint is going to get anywhere from here. So I called the FBI. I've talked to the FBI in San Antonio and also, I think, in Austin. Doesn't do any good. Those agents are polite, they're nice people, and they're not stupid. Nothing happens. They won't do anything.
You're listening to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. We're talking about guardianship abuse, which is a problem facing many, many people across the country. We're talking about a dear friend of mine, Shelley Thomson, who was a victim of guardianship abuse in Texas, who ended up dying in captivity against her will, and all her estate and money stolen by a stranger. Our guest also today is Phil Ross, an attorney, retired, in Texas, who was really a prince to Shelley. Even when he was banned by the judge from helping her, he still tried. In fact, that's why we're hearing Shelley today, because Phil gave her a phone so she could talk. She was able to fight so she could at least get a computer given to her so she could communicate. She was a prolific writer. She certainly wasn't lame, insane, diminished in any way. I think that's fairly clear when you hear it, Phil. Did you ever get a chance, Phil, to go to this facility to see her?
Yes, on many occasions, I went to the facility and I didn't tell them who I was. I just went directly to the locked part of the unit and let myself in and went to Shelley's room, which she had told me on the phone how to find her. And I found that the security at the facility was fairly lax on various occasions. There were a few times when I went to the facility that I was denied entrance, but other times I was allowed to just walk in and go directly to her room. Initially, I didn't have any problems. I was able to bring her groceries. I even brought her some beer and wine, which she requested, and smoking tobacco, but that didn't last very long. And then eventually, I wasn't able to go to the facility. And part of the reason, I think, was that I had come up with a idea that was potentially successful to help Shelley get out of the facility. I determined that I was going to offer to employ Shelley on a part-time paid basis and give the guardian and the court notice that Shelley and I signed a written agreement of employment, that she wanted to work for me, I wanted to employ her. Basically, I wanted to tap her knowledge as a benefit for myself and for her to be able to exercise our rights under the federal Constitution to associate with each other in a meaningful public way. And after a few months, the guardian finally refused to allow Shelley to work for me. And so I filed suit in federal court against both the guardian and the judge, Charles Stevens, for failure to supervise the guardian for violations of my right to engage in an employment relationship with Shelley. Since I was no longer a lawyer, I could not advocate directly for Shelley's rights, but I advocated for my rights to employ her. And that case is pending in federal court. Initially, I was seeking only injunctive relief by way of a court order commanding the Texas Health and Human Service Commission to allow Shelley to be employed by me and to give her reasonable accommodations. But then after Shelley died, not too long after I filed that lawsuit, I determined that in order to keep the case alive and to give Shelley the benefit of having published the facts about her case, I determined that I had to sue for damages. And so I filed an amended complaint just last week, and I received the summonses to serve on the judge and on the Texas Health and Human Service Commission in a lawsuit seeking damages for deprivation of my right to employ Shelley, which ultimately I calculated would lead to her freedom because I would show that she was competent to be employed and competent to take care of herself, and therefore in no need of the state protection by way of a guardianship. But I think I got too close to the solution, and the easiest way out for the state was just to deprive Shelley of the means of being able to stay alive.
Unbelievable.
She went into a hospital for a few days and she was dead.
Unbelievable that they would be so aggressively hostile. She wrote to another friend, Steve Glanz, who, by the way, has been such an advocate for Shelley and has lobbied the state, tried so hard to help her, and has been so helpful to everyone in this group of people that care for Shelley. In fact, Steve, thank you for, I know he's listening. He sent all this information to me, even offered to be on the show. He's just a terrific guy. And he sent me something Shelley wrote about her situation in this facility, which seemed to be worse than a prison. She said, I'm essentially in solitary confinement, no meaningful conversation with anyone. The other inmates are not conversational because she was in a memory ward, so she has no meaningful conversation. And she was apparently starting to feel odd and off and suspecting that they were feeding her psychoactive drugs. She wrote, as I write this, an inmate is screaming, help me, help me, please help me. They won't do anything. She is insane. They just let her yell. My guardian refuses to let me use any of the accumulated cash in my account. The last time I visited the business office, they told me that everything has to go through my guardian. I couldn't even get an updated account statement. This is abusive, but I don't have any rights. I'm also being held out the opportunity to get exercise. I'm not allowed to go to the indoor gym anymore because Medicare money has run out. It's very difficult to get anyone to walk outside with me. This is very bad for my physical health as well as my morale. There is no interest in taking a complaint about theft. Things were missing from her room. The administrator there came to her room after Shelley had made a written statement, and according to Shelley, was rudely, aggressively searched my room in an apparent belief that I had lied about the theft. I don't rate an apology, since I am not a human being. I have all the rights of a bag of Fritos. How long was Shelley in this place, Phil?
Shelley was already in Colonial Manor in 2018 when she first contacted me, and she stayed there until this year, 2025. And after the estate sale, which she notified me on the second day of the sale that she had heard that all of her personal possessions were being sold at her house by the state of Texas, who had hired an estate liquidator. So on the last day of the sale, I attended and purchased about $1,000 worth of her personal property, including her car, her clothes, most of her library books, a few pieces of antique furniture, and a couple of pieces of artwork, although she told me afterwards that I missed the one piece of artwork, which was the best. But with the acquisition of some of her personal property, I established a trust for Shelley with the intention of providing those personal property items to her when she was able to get her capacity restored. But when we petitioned the court to use some of the $15,000 proceeds from the sale of her personal property in order to get a second medical opinion, which we needed to prove that she did not lack capacity, the guardian petitioned the court to spend all the money on a prepaid funeral plan, which I thought was the worst kind of slap that they could have dreamed up. Basically condemn Shelley to death and use all her assets to purchase a prepaid funeral plan, which she totally opposed.
Oh, my God. Now, this isn't isolated. A top Texas, this is from 2018, so this is a little while ago, but a top Texas court official testified that 43% of the state's adult guardianship cases in